Hello and welcome to the River Shaman Ramblings podcast, where I do a lot of rambling. I am your host, Spear Carrier's Ghost Fox. The Ghost Fox out in the, well, I don't guess it's waves these days. Is it? We don't do radio that way anymore, do we? I have a story to tell you this time. And this is a story that has been happening for, since possibly 1997. I would say weirdness has abounded. I have thought a long time about whether or not I was going to share this. I know that talking about this situation might help other people who are in this situation. For some odd reason, this weird, and I do mean really weird to human earthly standards situation, really, really weird, is suppressed. And it's overlaid with a lot of fluff and goofiness and your typical, the universe is full of love and only the earth has bad things in it. Oh my gosh, yes, oh dearie, would you like some more pie? I have been going around trying to find some actual information about what was going on. And I finally had to throw up my hands. And I had to haul out the anthropology degree and slam it on the table and start doing a little bit of, sleuthing. And I haven't gotten very far. It is a very painful situation. And it actually involves things that are not of a Native American nature, except that I'm Native American, slammed in the middle of this problem. But I can tell you that some of the things that it touched upon are things that are in Native American lore. I had ended up having to reach out beyond what little bit I know of the steps that my father had passed down and start reaching out to just anybody who would listen. And so I've ended up with this pan-galactic saga. And it's very long, so I may end up having to put this in parts. Let us see what happens. 1997. Or maybe it was 1995. It was my first marriage. My children were very small, and I don't really remember having the internet, but apparently I might have had the internet already by then. My ex-husband used to very proudly tell me how he used to be the left-hand man to the island that I grew up on's highest satanic priest. Yep, he was very proud of this. And that he had his own demon. A female, he had told me. Come here, Spider. My cat Spider has decided he wants to be held and cuddled because you look busy, Mommy. Anyway, 1997. I grew up how I was. And years later, I find it really, really kind of sad that my husband, and actually various people in my life, were about, I'm into this metaphysical, this, will actually stand and laugh at somebody who was actually raised metaphysically and was what I call bridging, where they have a foot in both worlds, which is an old way of being and still persists in some of our literature. And but people who are like, I do these metaphysical things, will meet someone like me and laugh and point fingers and laugh. But my ex-husband was one of those. But he had his demon, he had told me, and everything. We had small children, and at the time, I didn't know he was cheating on me yet. I didn't know a lot of his lies yet. I was still very trusting and innocent and wide-eyed. It was, I bought his lies for a very long time. As an aside, he's also the one who gave me my very first black eye. Little things like that. But I laid down for a nap that day. I don't really like to take naps normally. I don't like how they make me feel. They make me all groggy. But that day I wanted to take a nap. So I laid down to take a nap in the alpha state, which is that, I think it's alpha state. I always have trouble with that part. It's the state where you're just falling asleep and it's almost like a form of hypnotism. And it's actually the ideal state that the, what we call the cultural program, by the way, I'm pretty sure that's not the name of the program, but we know where it comes from, likes to target their candidates, shall we call them, to wake them up and stuff. And that's a story for another day. But I'm in that state, and in my face comes, an elephant person. Now, back then, I knew next to nothing about the India pantheon. I knew they existed. I had heard about them, but this is before the internet. Well, this is before I had the internet in the way that we know it now. This elephant person is in front of me, and she was neat. She had her hair cut in a light brown 1980s flyback fashion that was popular for a while, and she had an elephant nose. But you might think, oh my God, that's ugly. No, actually, I remember laying there going, wow, she doesn't look human, but she's pretty. I was actually impressed about how pretty she was. I even told her she was pretty. But she asked me, would you like to go home? Back then, I didn't know as much as I have managed to uncover and know now. But one thing I knew was where my soul had come from. I had been remembering this place since I was, 12, 14. And before that, I had been writing down a whole lot of Viking era memories and stuff. Things that have all been, by the way, confirmed later as adulthood, and they're not important to the story. The point is, my soul has always been remembering. But the home world, shall we call it, now I know it's a home layer, was something that had permeated my very existence. Because when I was about 14 years old, give or take, maybe 13, I'm in my parents' backyard doing backyard things, sitting in the flowers or whatever, because we used to have this backyard and Dad used to let the flowers grow, which, that's what you should do. But anyway, my family never really did like me. They made sure I knew that when my parents died, actually. And yeah, I was heavily made fun of in school. So I'm this adolescent who is very keenly aware that she is not liked by anyone. And I'm in the backyard. I had already had contact with a couple of spirits by that point in time. I was already 1 foot in either world, a bridge. I'm sitting there talking to myself about how no one likes me. I'm drawing pictures, as I recall. And that's when I felt and heard someone tell me, no, we love you. And I was like, why? I'm no one special. And they responded, you are our princess. For the longest time, I thought that meant princess in nobility. Now I know differently, but currently in this particular time frame, that's what I thought. And that's when I was given the keys to unlock the memories of where I originated from. I gave it names that are not necessarily accurate. I drew many pictures of people that you look at them and like, well, those are human, but when you really look at them, they're not. And finally, the culmination of it was this became a very large, important part to me. Now, it doesn't mean that later in life it became a dream and I was like, what was I doing? I was so silly. I was a fantastical child. But that day in 1997, even though I was no longer focusing on that memory cluster, shall we call it, it was still something important to me, such that when this Damon, whatever, however you want to pronounce it, came to me and asked, do you want to go home? I naturally said yes. I was picked up and carried. This was the very first time, I have to say, that I was picked up and carried to go to an origin point or a different point in my time. It's kind of neat when it happens to you. You're literally picked up like you're a small child, or maybe I'm just small, and you can almost feel the winds of time rushing by you, and it's like a white blur almost. But if the carrier is gentle, you know it's happening, but it's not like a roller coaster ride, which is nice because I really don't like those. And then you're set down, boop. In my case, I felt the winds of time and everything. It's like, okay, this is new. And then I woke up my first self walking down off a mountain coming home. To be honest, I really don't want to give too much about what happened in, I'm going to call it, the garden. I don't want to talk about how I ended up on a mountain, or how I ended up on Earth or anything. It's one, because I actually used part of that as a basis in my comic book. And two, some of it's private. I used to be all about talking about it, and everybody used to go, oh, okay, let's shut her up, that inconvenient person. And I could probably go on about, I was born in the Blue Valley, but you know what? if you want to know, then you can find it. And if you don't want to know, I'm not going to hand it to you. I no longer give a fuck what anybody thinks about all that kind of stuff. All I know is this happened. The very first incarnation, let's call her something. Well, let's call her the first. The first. She had a home life. She had a small cluster of people that were allowed to be around her. She had one that was becoming a possible future mate. She had these things happening for her, and she lived in a place that was sure that because their lair was a little off to the side, that Tinkling was a cat, a little off to the side, that no, they wouldn't hit any trouble, not at all. Kind of like how people do today. This actually is what happened to many of the tribes whenever colonialism was happening in America. Now, y'all know that I do not like to say things have been colonized, not because it hasn't been colonized, but because it's being used as a slur against people born today that had nothing to do with what happened 400 years ago. So I really like to avoid that sort of talk and thinking. But to go back to those days, that was actually part of the problem. We had the tribes that lived side by side. So we had the Mohegans, and we had the Neantic, and the Lenape, just random tribes off the top of my head. And it was, well, these people from England, shall we say, these Europeans, they have wanted this area of land, and they have conquered the Mohegans, and hey, we remember this, but they're not going to want us. That's not our problem because it's not our tribe. I mean, there was a couple of times tribes did get involved and get mixed up in the French and Indian Wars, but overall what I was taught often was that it was a whole lot of, that's our neighbor, that's not our problem, they're not going to come after us. And then the Europeans would expand, and then there was more of the next tribe over going, that's our neighbor, that's not our problem, they're not going to hurt us. We've made a treaty, we've done this, we've done that, and it kept expanding out further and further and further until you ended up with the Indian Wars. Well, that's the sentiment that was happening in the garden. There was a thing that was pretty much locust chewing its way across the cosmic layers, which, by the way, the cosmic layers are a really neat phenomenon that have been recorded in a lot of religions, or just cultural faiths. Take, for example, the Gnostics, who I have just recently learned, and yes, I have a lot to learn in my life, same as anybody else, were a Christian sect that, okay, these guys are Christian, I always thought for over the years, but their view of Christianity and the creation and the world is, wow, so close to what I grew up in my head that I have been occasionally poking at videos on YouTube and considering getting a Gnostic book, except that I never have time to read these days. But let's discuss the Gnostic cosmic layers to begin with. You had the Pleroma, the fullness or divine realm of pure light where the true God, not the demiurge, their demiurge, dwelt. Now, the Pleroma is a layer that I have had some dealings with, and that is going to be part of the story. Then there's the ions. These are divine emanations or entities that exist within the Pleroma. I like to call them glimmers. The supreme light consciousness descends through, quote, I'm going to quote here from Wikipedia, a series of stages, gradations, worlds, or hypostases, becoming progressively more material and embodied. These are the layers. The way I see the great cosmos layer, I see us as a sandwich, and we have all these ingredients piled on top of each other. So we've got a piece of ham, then we've got a piece of lettuce, and then we've got, a piece of bacon or a couple of pieces of bacon, and you've got a tomato. And it's all up, and then you've got your condiments, and your condiments are down. It's all squishing down, and somebody has squished that sandwich, so it is a squishy sandwich. And we, the Earth, are in the middle somewhere, and the squishiest layer and all the stuff from the upper and the lower parts of the sandwich have all gotten involved in that. And that's why we're so physical, and that's why we're built this way. And that is why we have some things that match the upper parts of the sandwich, and that's why we have some stuff that matches the bottom parts of the sandwich, because we're kind of squishy in the middle, getting affected by it all. A friend of mine was like, yes, I really hate it the way people complain. Why does Earth have to be the center of everything? Well, Earth is not the center of everything. There is more than one thing in this sandwich. Earth just happens to be one of the ones in the middle getting squished on. There are other places in the middle getting squished on. The garden and some other kind of physical-ish places being part of it. You can go back and forth. There have been records of contact. But that is how I see it. So the Gnostics have their cosmic layers. I have a ham sandwich, okay? It's a ham sandwich. The Hindu also had cosmic layers. Hindu cosmology described 14 what they called lokas, realms, layers, arranged, and they had a specific structure. They actually, and I can't remember which book I read. I was like, oh my God, there's all my information in my head in this ancient text. I believe it was the Bhagavatam, but I could be wrong. I read all 3 books in like 2 days, so I couldn't tell you. It was one of those. But anyway, they had the 7 upper realms, higher dimensions, and they even had in the text that I read how they were placed. So if you were, say, astral traveling and you wanted to get to a specific one, you could actually read that book, and if you know how to follow directions, you could figure it out. And then they had 7 lower realms, the netherworlds. These lokas are, quote, layered like petals of a lotus, unquote, with each vibrating at, quote, a distinct frequency accessible only to beings whose karma aligns with its dimensional plane, unquote, according to medium. Pah! Whatever. I travel all the time, whatever. I don't believe that whole accessible thing. This is where I start to have a little bit of a problem. It's like, oh, are we going to do that whole, the only place in the world that does not have love is Earth thing? Because the story I'm about to tell you. Hindu texts also describe a 3-layered division. The higher planetary systems, the Svargalaka, or however you pronounce that, the middle planetary systems, including Earth, and the lower planetary systems. And that's according to the Prabhupada News, apparently. In my own cultural sphere, area of the sphere, there are actually several traditions that describe a 3-layered cosmos. Remember, ham sandwich, upper world, and the above world, the upper world. Up there, that way, heaven, source of creative power where ancestors' souls reside. We have the middle world, where we are, where humans live alongside animals and plants. Then we have the below world, the underworld, associated with various forces that must be balanced with those of the above world. And that's just it. I personally believe that's where the crux of my current problem comes from, is that things are no longer balanced. That part is courtesy of the University of Arkansas. Yes, Arkansas. I know Arkansas. Arkansas. There's a certain person out there that knows why it will always be Arkansas to me until the day she dies. Then, of course, there is Norse cosmology. The Norse, they've used the universe as having 9 distinct worlds or realms that were connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree. And there were 3 levels. Have you guys noticed that there's a 3 here? 3, one of the sacred numbers. 3 levels with 3 worlds on each level. And they included the realms like Asgard, which is where the gods were, Midgard, which is where we are, Jotunheim, which is the giants, and Helheim, which is the underworld. And that's where we got hell from. And up and down the world tree is a squirrel that goes up and down, and they have like this cosmic alarm system at the top in the form of things. It's a really interesting cosmology. I don't know a lot about it. What's really important to the story here, I do have to break, is that when I was younger and I was starting to try to recover lives and everything, I guess you'd call them my spirits, my spirit guides, my ancestors. I'm sorry, but yes, my ancestors told me, don't do a lot of reading. Be careful. Don't do a lot of reading. When you do a working or whatever thing, it's best that you enter it cold. I have entered the climax of the story cold, and I'm glad I did. Now, going back to the cosmology, Aztec cosmology, I did not know this until now, had a 3-layered universe with multiple layers in each. They had 13 upper heaven realms. And then the middle layer is inhabited by humans. And then they had 9 levels of the underworld with Mictlantecuhtli's realm at the bottom. That's according to Guggenheim. And then we have Buddhist cosmology, another one that I didn't know about until just now. They have apparently an elaborate cosmic structure. Oh boy. 6 realms of existence: gods, demigods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings. Blah, blah, blah. And they have multiple heavens and hells, and they're arranged in layers along this sandwich. The concept of Mount Meru as the cosmic axis. And then apparently there is an understanding of the universe and multiverse encompassing its evolutionary cycles, structural organization, and the intricate geography of its world. And that's according to academia. Now, what I'm starting to notice is that all of them have this axis. Either we have Yggdrasil or we have here a mountain. I'm actually not sure of the Indian situation, but I'm sure if we dug, there might actually be an axis at this point. Now, in Zoroastrian cosmology, which is apparently one of the oldest documented layered cosmologies, multiple heavens are above the earth. The lowest heaven of the stars is itself split into 4 levels. Above the heavens themselves are the endless nights. The distance between stations is about 34,000 parasangs. That's interesting. I noticed that they only cared about heaven here. Well, that's by Wikipedia. There might be more if I really wanted to dig. Then we have Slavic native faith. They also have a 3-layered sacred number cosmos. Prav, universal cosmic order, law of heaven. Yav, the visible world. Nav, the invisible world. And these 3 planes are interconnected, with Prav permeating and regulating the other 2. And then many people's favorite, the Celtic Druidic cosmology. And this is a message in the world coming from somebody that somebody had once decided was the last Druid princess. I haven't figured out how in the world he got that idea yet after all these years. Celtic traditions also maintained a layered cosmic view, often depicted as a 3-world system, again, connected by a cosmic axis or tree. It's starting to sound a little bit Norse there, isn't it? And the, quote, tripartite structure of the universe with parts connected by an axis. And this axis could either be a column or a cosmic tree, according to academia. Then we have the Kabbalistic tree of life. Jewish mysticism presents one of the most detailed cosmic layer systems, apparently. Now, I have never really looked into the Kabbalistic system. I might want to. I mean, I've played with the tree of life itself because I know the Thelemite saying about being kind to your brother be kind to that madman on the street for he might be a brother, because they have a saying about failing to cross the final abyss. But that's only because I was once in contact with someone when I lived in Bayonne, New Jersey, who was a Thelemite. Hi, if you're listening, I have thought about you often, and I hope you are doing well. But the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, Jewish mysticism with their cosmic layer system, we have 10 Sephirot spheres connected by 22 paths, arranged in 3 vertical columns or pillars. Each Sephirah represents a specific divine attribute or energy. And to quote Wikipedia, which isn't as reliable as people think it is, but it's what I've got in front of me. After the energy of creation has condensed into matter, it is thought to reverse its course back up the tree until it is once again united with its true nature. The similarities between these systems are actually striking. Yeah, it's like, wow. But one thing we can look at is they are grouped into patterns, 3, according to what I have in front of me, also 7, 9, or 14. There's multiple layers or realms that you can move back and forth. There's correspondence, and some religions, according to how they see the world, I've noticed, tend to attribute a lot of that to the highest high realm with the glimmers. People kind of are avoiding talking about the low realm, and eventually I will one day, because that's actually a really interesting area. But what's important here is that back then in 1987, I kind of knew this because I was part of this and had been slammed in the middle of it, but I didn't completely understand all of it. My information was small. And the way I saw it was, well, I come from this other place, and I thought of it as another planet. I mean, I now know it's definitely a different layer, but it's still another planet. It's just not next to us. You can't fly to it in a rocket ship easily. So I go home, thanks to my ex-husband's demon. Again, the layers were getting chewed up by this locust-like force. They were just cutting like a swath through all the layers. They had started at the top of the ham sandwich, and they were cutting down, and they were cutting across, and they had gotten to the middle of the layer, and they had discovered things were very tasty there, and they were just chewing up that piece of bacon and all the other little pieces. And we had done like the tribes did in the 1600s and 1700s. Well, they're not going to touch us because we're off to the side. We're safe. We're in a pocket. We're hidden. We're in the hidden world. And we kind of knew that there was trouble on the outside. We knew that it was headed that way. But we're safe until the day that we weren't. And that is the day that my young first life's self, that is the day that the first's world was turned completely upside down. She just happened to be outside of her home when they cut into the air out of nowhere and began to lay waste. It was a raid. It was a war zone. Now, I am aware as a adult with graying hair, or silver actually, that having gotten the pleasure of watching Battlestar Galactica, the first one, really, really colored this memory. I know that what I see in my head is like a scene out of that first old series. But what I had known before that was that this is what happened. They came through, things were upended. She was left standing going, what the heck? The world has exploded around me. And it was her love interest, shall we call him? We'll call him Juvie, who, by the way, that is the name I am also using in the comic book. Because you write what you know. Plus, also, I have to admit that when you get a good story, tell it. But Juvie pulled her out of there, and they ran until they got into their, they had this little hidey hole that she and her friends and him used to hang at. She's maybe 14 years old, our age. Unfortunately, this boy was basically what you would call rear guard. He was a guard in training, and so he put her where he knew his love interest would be safe. And then he turned and he ran. This was so dramatic. Picture the swelling music. Titanic ain't got nothing on this. Oh! And he never came back. She actually hid and watched from afar as people were loaded up and carted off what people that were left. And she proceeded to be alone for a very long time after that. Now, for the longest time, I did not know how much of this was real. When I was a child, it was real, and I had no confirmation. And I still question part of that aspect of the story. I don't question all of it, but I question bits because you must. When you are given messages from your spirits, or when you're astral traveling or doing visions, you must question, which is why I understand now I was instructed to go into things as cold as possible. But for the moment, we're going to take that story as it is, understanding that it's under question, because truly it's not as important so much as what does stand is that we have this person who, by the way, was very vain about her black hair and was a brat about it and was well known to be a brat. So much well known to be a brat that over the years, I have met many people who were from there who remembered me and were like, oh my God, you were the brat, you brat. So pretty sure that part's confirmed. And she was left alone for many years. She was left alone. She had to fend for herself. Now, I just recently learned about this thing called isolation trauma. And if you're left alone for too long, then you'll lose how to speak right. And even if it's just like perceived isolation from, say, society, which why canceling people and cutting them off the internet and cutting off their communication and doing this thing, oh, well, we're mad at them because they had the wrong political opinion. Let's have them canceled. You're actually risking psychological damage to these people. Well, what they can go out. Oh, can they? Because over the years, I have heard of many people who were canceled to such a point that they no longer even had a social life. That can actually be psychologically damaging. And isolation trauma actually can change your brain. It can actually physically harm you. So for all of those people out there saying that, oh, words are really dangerous, weaponizing someone's opinion against them and isolating them from society is actually dangerous, like genuinely medically proven to be dangerous. For example, you begin to deteriorate. Between 3 to 6 months, an adult with no human contact at all, which, oh, but that's not what we're doing. But we're going to go completely extreme here. 3 to 6 months of contact not happening for an adult. You begin to see noticeable speech difficulties, and then you get significant deterioration within a year. People don't like to admit this, but humans in particular are built to be around other humans, which is very similar to how the people in the garden layer are built. You have to be around people. There's a lot about isolation trauma that I could completely bring up, but I don't want this episode to be about that. We're going to do a speech deterioration isolation, though. We're going to go over that because that's actually really significant here. There's a short term, days to weeks. Within days, people start talking to themselves to maintain verbal skills. So if you don't get out much and you find yourself talking to yourself a lot, that's probably what's going on. You're instinctively starting to protect your verbal skills. 1 to 2 weeks, initial signs of vocabulary retrieval problems. 3 to 4 weeks, studies show measurable neurophysiological changes affecting cognitive functions, including speech processing. That's according to PubMed. Then we have medium term, which is months. 1 to 3 months, speech patterns begin to change noticeably. 3 to 5 months, more significant language deterioration begins, with researchers noting, quote, first effects of language attrition after 5 months of reduced exposure. Your language starts to fall apart. This is according to Cambridge. Around 6 months, people in isolation begin developing unique speech patterns or even their own accent. Apparently, this was observed in the Antarctic researchers who showed measurable changes in pronunciation after just 6 months of isolation, according to BBC. And then we have long-term years. 1 to 2 years, severe language deterioration can occur, with studies showing individuals, quote, unable to produce complete sentences after 18 months of isolation, according to Cambridge. Several years, speech can become highly idiosyncratic with like reduced vocabulary, simplified grammar, eat dog eat, unusual syntax patterns, difficulty with complex linguistic structures, creation of personal idioms and expressions. That's just the deterioration of language. And why is that important? Because whenever First came down off the mountain, she had done so after putting herself into a long sleep. The people in that place, this chewing through the layers situation had happened during a time when you would travel back and forth with the layers frequently. And some people could do it physically. We actually still have in our mythos accounts of this happening, going back and forth. Some good, some bad. But another way you would do it is you would do it astrally. There were these chambers and you would go in and it would take your spirit out and your spirit would go and either astral travel or even borrow a body on one of the other layers. And I would say it was a long time ago space alien touristy trade. That's the best way I can describe it. Whether or not you got paid for doing it, I couldn't begin to tell you. And she and her friends were building a smallish unit in their hideout because she wasn't allowed to go anywhere. And they were her best friends. And so they were building this thing. And it was a thing to do. And who knows, maybe the guys never meant to to finish it. But she was alone long enough and had learned enough, and possibly maybe even the unit was stolen and there really wasn't that much that needed to get done. I couldn't begin to tell you that part. That she got it up and running and was able to go out. And she was out a very long time. I have met people here in this layer that are from the garden layer that remember things, and they all say pretty much the same things about that. I had a friend who I'd sent back to check on what I call them the stasis units, the travel chambers, I think is the proper term, the travel chambers for me to see what was going on. And she came back really upset because some of those people in the travel chambers didn't make it. So you've got dead bodies floating around in there, but it's a stasis chamber. So these dead bodies are not decaying. Isn't that lovely? Which means that their souls probably didn't make it after the travel out. But that was the only place to go when the locust monster beetle things came through and chewed up the layer. People ran where they could go. And there's no getting through those doors, so you went in there. But so she had went out alone, and you could almost say it was like Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, and who knows, maybe it was, but whatever the case may be, the first walked down off the mountain, and the first thing that I noticed in this smaller body, very aware that I was in a smaller body, was that things were very overgrown around the house. I mean, fucking duh. And the second was that the house seemed smaller than I recalled it. Well, I mean, fucking duh. Our imaginations are going to fill in a lot of stuff. But I walked in and I still knew the way, and I slipped in through a back door into the little kitchen area, and there was a person there, and I was surprised to see people there, actually. And she was doing something at the counter area. Maybe, let's just say she was slicing potatoes for the sake of saying something, and she was very human looking, and she looked up long enough to look at me and go, "Oh, you're back." And that's as far as that went. And then she went back to peeling potatoes. It was a genuine, friendly, "Oh, you're back. We're glad to see this, but we are not able to go any further. We have to get our work done" reaction. Now I know why. But for years, that puzzled me. There was no, "Oh my God, you're back. You're alive. Oh dear God." It was just an acknowledgement. It's as far as we can do, but we must get this done. And I didn't speak. Did not speak. I went up the back stairs. It's like this little stair area. Now know that some houses actually had servant stairs where the servants would go through the back and were never allowed in the main hallways, and they would go from room to room and stuff like that. I wouldn't say it was like that. It was just like a back stair. And I went up the stairs straight to my bedroom, because I obviously knew the way, and walked into my bedroom and stood there for a minute, just quietly, especially for me, quietly thrilled that my room was exactly how I left it. Now, I had never remembered that room all those years until that day in 1997, but standing there, I knew it then. And I remember looking at where I slept going, "Oh yeah, that's right. We use couches." And I remember looking at my objects, these things that would be alien to us here, but to me, they were very familiar, and just thrilled that I got to handle them again. Now, my room has a balcony. So I went on the balcony and I looked out and I looked at how the nature had taken over the area and everything. And was like, yep, I'm home. And then for the next several days, I proceeded to walk around and look at stuff. And one of the places that I went to was under the hill, which is to say I went under where my house was, where there's a large cavern system where these, for lack of a better way of explaining it, dragons lived. Now, there are more than one type of dragon. There's our celestial serpent type, and then there's the European type. And the European type I'm going to call Codex, which, by the way, is the term I'm using in my comic book because I like that term. It's a term I borrowed from a friend of mine. So the Codex are living under there, and I was really surprised they were there, to be honest. I was not expecting them, but in the same token, there was this feeling of familiarity, like, why are they here waiting, but yet I know them. So I'm not quite sure what was up with that feeling. And while I was under there was one particular codex. Her title, we go by titles. Her title was the Queen of the Neighboring Colony. And I don't mean royalty queen. And she was so red, she was nearly black. And she was not happy to see me. She did not like me at all. What else is a surprise? I have grown up, hated by everybody. Sure, why not you too, lady? And so she voiced her complaint and walked off. Huff, 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 huff. She only lives here, that's all. And then they have this room where there's this book. And it's this really huge book. And I walked up to the book, going to look at the book. And when you look at the book, you're able to be shown things. There was a whole lot of personal dates, births, timeline. It was kind of like the Bible where it starts telling you somebody beget somebody, beget somebody, beget the sheep, beget the dog, beget the horse, beget the cow, and then dishonor on your cow. And I'm looking at this and I was given an earthly date. And I'm looking at this date. Next thing I know, one of the dragons who figured out that I really don't really see and hear very well got up in my face to catch my attention. And he said, this marriage was not meant to be. Okay, I will keep that in mind. I went about my business looking at other things. And then I went back to my room for the day, right? I get up in my room and I'm just so happy I'm home. I'm just so happy I'm home after I don't know how many years of wanting to be home. And there I was home. Oh, it was just glorious. And so for the first time in days since arriving, I spoke. I danced to myself. This is very important, by the way. I danced to myself, doing my little arms up like a little fairy princess. And I sang, I am so-and-so, and I have come home. And that's when the shit hit the fan. Somebody was at the door. Now, we didn't have doors. They were just openings. He's standing in this opening, this dude, clearly maybe twice my age. So if I'm 14, that would have made him 28. Clearly twice my age, nostrils flaring, furious that I exist. Who are you? What are you doing here? If you are so-and-so, your soul has changed and you don't belong here. The house, the keep, the building, I call it the anthill, has a feature where if something doesn't belong, you can command it to cast that thing out. And that's exactly what happened. I barely had time to react. Not that I would have spoken. And I suddenly found myself blown off my balcony out the window. And I was clinging to the side of the anthill for dear life while I was being buffeted, repeating to myself over and over again, because I was a little bit into Christianity back then, I rebuke you, I rebuke you, I rebuke you. Because that's what you do, right? Whenever something bad attacks you and you know, it's magical, clearly you rebuke it. Oh, I was terrified though. I was so afraid. For years after that event, when I woke up back here on this layer, disorientated, confused, and not very happy with my ex-husband in that sugary, sappy tone of voice he would take when he wanted you to think he was the good guy and cared so much. Saying to me, I'm so glad I got you up. I have not been able to get you up for 2 hours now. You have not been able to wake up, and I was getting worried. So after I got up and got moving, I went on the internet and I guess I did have the internet. Oh, it's all coming back to me. These things that I haven't thought about in forever. I was on an email list actually. And it was one of those metaphysical dealios. And I told everybody what happened. And I gave the date that the book had given to me. And I got a response from someone who was completely flabbergasted that they had set that exact time for their wedding and they just hadn't revealed it yet. And here I was blabbing about their wedding date. Whoops. I couldn't begin to tell you if that marriage was truly meant to be or not. I won't go there. For years, I have had one question on my mind. How the hell was I clinging to the outside of the anthill? And that is where I have to end this particular podcast. That is where the first part of this story ends. Because for years after that, I didn't think about it much. There were effects, there were things happening, but it was just an event that I told everybody online about, and I was so, wow, this weird thing happened to me. Isn't it neat? I got to go home. And even just last year, I was still, let me tell you about the one time I got to go home. In part 2, I will begin to tell you the next part of, let me tell you how the shit hit the fan. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. To sign off, I'm going to share a song I wrote that actually is courtesy of these events. And yes, it is AI music. I am hoping that I and my musical partner will be remaking this soon. But I wrote it.
Stars burn over my homeland, ashes of a dead domain. And though the light has flickered low, painful memories remain. These wings that carried me through space are from a time that's long been lost. 2 worlds have closed their doors to me. This is freedom's hidden cost. No way home, no way back to the stars that saw my birth. No way home, no way back from heaven or to the earth. Exile spans eternity, an angel with nowhere to fly. No way home, no way back, just forward until I die. Was on my face. Shadows took my spirit when I fled, cast myself from their embrace. Between these worlds I drift alone, neither one will claim me now. A queen with no kingdom left, a servant of broken vows. Oh, no way home. Just forward until I die. In this exile I have found what the gods could never give. Not just living, but a place where my heart can truly live. They stand by me, flawed and true. They fight when I cannot stand. Perhaps home is not a place, but those who can understand. Away from me, the gesture a kind release, but old wounds still mark my wings. My wanderings may never cease, sheltering in this new world. I worry it may not last, but when you cannot go home, you must let go of the past. No way home.